Dear students, welcome to our first session of class 8th history, chapter 1, how, when and where. Students, you have already studied ancient history in class 6. It began from the life of early man to the making of kingdoms and empires and building of great dynasties like the Mauryans, Guptas, Pallavas and Cholas. And in class 7th you had medieval history in which you saw the invasion of the Islamic dynasties. The medieval period is dominated by the Sultanates and the Mughals. Dear students, in class 8th, we will be studying modern history in which we will learn about the events that happened after the arrival of the British in India and the impact we had of their rule till we obtained our independence. As the Mughal power declined, that gave great opportunity to the British to extend their hold over our territories. Before we proceed with our learning about the modern period in further chapters, we will go with the very first chapter, how, when and where, to understand few things which are prerequisite to understand the chapters ahead. So let us start with our first chapter of history. So the chapter again I would like to tell, it's how, when and where. And the subtopics we will cover are, first one is how important are the dates, which dates are important. Third is how do we periodize Indian history. Fourth is what is colonial. Students, now I would like to tell you about the objectives we are going to learn today. So the first one is to help you understand how dates are important in history, to make you understand which dates are important in history. Thirdly, to know how Indian history has been periodized by James Mill. And next is to enable you to understand what colonization is. Students, first of all we are starting with our very first topic, and that is how important are dates. So students, we have some conception related to dates. So let's know about that. We are often scared of studying history, thinking that history is nothing else but dates. Because of this, history seems boring and uninteresting to most of us. So we lose our interest in the same. But dear students, this is totally a misconception. History is not just to do with dates only. So what is that about? It is about changes that occur over time. Secondly, it is about finding out how things were in the past and how things have changed at present. So dear student, as we compare the past with the present, we refer to time, we talk of before and after. And secondly, we must know that there is no precise dates for all the events happened in history. Many events happened in due course of time. Dear students, many of the events that happened in the past can't be precisely dated as they have happened in due course of time. We have few examples to explain this. The first example we have is, people in India did not begin drinking one fine day. They developed a taste for it over time. Here, there can be no one clear date for such a process such as this. Similarly, we have second example. One single date can't be fixed on which British rule was established. British rule was established gradually, not all of a sudden, on one single day. So students, we have the third example with us, that is, the national movement did not start on a particular day. National movement even got built up gradually by arousing national consciousness among the masses, which took great time. So student, we have the fourth example before us, that is, changes did not take place within the economy and the society one specific date. If we talk about social changes like education for girl child or empowerment of women or upliftment of the lower caste, All of these changes happened after a long period of struggle and fight. This also did not happen one fine day. Similarly, changes in the economy started taking place gradually only and still is taking place. So here students, we can conclude with our 4 examples that all these things happened over a stretch of time. We can only refer to a span of time over which particular changes became visible. We can only tell an approximate period for such events, not the specific dates. So here again we see that history can't be studied precisely by the dates. So we can conclude here that history is not just the dates we learn about. Then the second question arises, still why do we associate history with dates when dates are not that important now? So this association has a reason. So let's find out. So the reason is, earlier historians just focused on the lives of kings and the events related to their lives. Dear students, you can see in the chart given here the specific dates related to the rule of different Mughal emperors in chronological order. At this time, dates related to the lives of kings was the only important area of interest to the historians. So they focused their lives and their activities only. What they wrote about, what the historian wrote about the kings, they wrote only about the year a king was crowned, the year he married, the year he had a child, the year he fought a particular war, the year he died, and the year the next ruler succeeded to the throne. For events such as these, specific dates can be determined. So dear students, earlier dates were important when historians were interested only in the lives of kings. But now historians write about a host of other issues and other questions, like first is like they look at how people earn their livelihood. They even see what they produced and ate. They even see now how cities developed and markets came up. Historian even studies about how kingdoms were formed and new ideas spread. They even want to know how cultures and society changed. So students, here we can see that the historian are studying not just the lives of kings but a host of other subjects as well, for which specific dates cannot be told. So dear students, specific dates have become less important now. So dear students, by what criteria we choose a set of dates as important? Dates are not important on their own. It is the event which is important, and event makes a particular set of dates as important. If the focus of study changes, a new set of dates will appear significant. Dear students, here we are talking about the importance of events rather than dates. So let us consider an example again here to understand this concept. In the history written by British historians in India, the rule of each Governor General was important. These history begin with the rule of the first Governor General, Warren Hastings, and ended with the last Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten. Dear students, here I am giving you a very small interesting activity, that is to find out all the Governor Generals and Viceroys who ruled over India in the chronological order. Dear students, all the dates in the history books written by British historians were linked to these personalities only, to their activities, policies, achievements. Means what the Governor General and the Viceroys did, that was only interesting to the British historian to note down. And it was as if there was nothing outside their lives that was important. Do the Indians not have any history during this period? They do have their histories. Indian life simply doesn't fit when British life is focused. But dear students, Indians do have their histories during this period. To learn about their life's history is to be studied in a different way now. When we focus their lives, another sets of dates become important to us. Hence, dear students, it's not the dates which are important, but the events which make the dates important. I hope you have understood by now that the dates are not important by their own. The events are important, and even makes the dates important. Then why do we periodize history? This is another question which comes to our mind. We do so in an attempt to capture the characteristic of a time, to know the peculiarities of that period. Secondly, to demarcate the difference between periods which reflect our idea about the past, means how the periods differ from one to another. Thirdly, to show how we see the significance of change from one period to the next. That means what changes happened in different periods. So dear students, now we will see that in 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, published a massive 3-volume work, A History of British India. In this book, A History of British India, he divided Indian history into 3 periods, that is Hindu, Muslim and British. This periodization came to be widely accepted. So let us see why James Mill divided Indian history into Hindu, Muslim and British period. Let's see his thoughts. Mill thought that Asian societies were at the lower level of civilization and the Europeans were at the higher level. Civilization means a society which has its own highly developed culture and way of life, and Mill believed Europeans' way of life was much better than the Asian societies. According to his telling of history, before the British came to India, Hindu and Muslim despots ruled the country. Dear students, despot here means the ruler who ruled in a cruel way. And religious intolerance, caste taboos and superstitious practices dominated social life. Means nothing good was going on in our country. James Mill further says, the British rule over India will help people civilize as their life and manner will be introduced in India. The British rule will end the period of darkness and will bring progress and happiness in the lives of Indians. Mill in fact suggested that the British should conquer all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people. For India was not capable of progress without British help. Dear student, can you make out the problem with such periodization of Indian history as Hindu, Muslim and British? There are 2 problems with this periodization. So dear student, let us know the 2 problems. Firstly, British rule represented all the force of progress and civilization. Secondly, the period before British rule was one of darkness. Dear students, can such a conception be accepted today? Such conceptions are totally false. Why? Let us know that also. The glorious achievements made in the past in every field is itself exemplary. So much have been given by India to the world to learn from. So we can't state the period before British rule one of darkness. And secondly, students, can we refer to any period as Hindu or Muslim? Did not a variety of faiths exist simultaneously in these periods? Dear students, periodization as per rulers' religion suggests that the lives and practices of their subjects do not really matter. Even rulers in ancient India did not all share the same faith. Then why to characterize an age only through the religion of rulers of the time? So students, there is an alternate way of periodization which is most commonly accepted. So an alternate way of periodization moving away from the British classification, historians have usually divided Indian history into ancient, medieval and modern. And you must have even you are studying these 3 periods only in your textbook. In class 6 you have studied ancient history, in 7th you have studied medieval history, and now you are going on with the modern history. So, this periodization has been accepted in India. So, dear students, this division too has its problem. This periodization is borrowed from the West, firstly, and secondly, the modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity, that is science, reason, democracy, liberty and equality. Medieval was the term used to describe a society where these features of modern society did not exist. Features like science, reason, democracy, liberty, equality, etc. did not exist in the medieval period according to this periodization. So, dear student, can we uncritically accept this way of periodization too? So, there is a question and answer to find out. As there was absence of equality, freedom or liberty under British rule, nor was the British period one of economic growth and progress, as we were heavily exploited at the hands of British and economy was terribly ruined. Many historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. Colonial is the apt way of describing British period. So, now student, a question arises here that what is colonial and why to refer British period as colonial, not as modern. The British came to conquer the country and establish their rule, subjugating local Nawabs and Rajas. Secondly, they gained control over the economy and the society. They collected revenue to meet all their expenses, bought the goods they wanted at low prices, produced crops they needed for export. Thirdly, British rule brought changes in the values and taste, customs and practices of the Indians. So, you have seen here that how the Indian lives got affected in every sphere by the Britishers. So, when the subjugation of one country by another leads to these kind of political, economic, social and cultural changes, we refer to the process as colonization. And dear students, British gained control over all our territory and eventually started controlling the lives of our people and brought in change in every sphere, be it social, political, cultural or economic, and this is what colonization is. So, here students, our session for today has ended. Now, let us briefly recapitulate what we have learned today. So, what we learnt is, firstly, history is not just about memorizing dates. This we learnt first. Then we learnt it's about how things were in the past and how things have changed. Third thing which we learnt was all events can't be precisely dated. Fourthly, dates were important when only the king's lives were focused. Dates are not important on their own, this we learnt next, but the events are important. An event makes a particular set of dates as important. And what important thing we learn in the chapter today is about James Mill periodization. James Mill divided Indian history into 3 periods. If you remember, we learnt the periods were divided as Hindu, Muslim and the British. History is most commonly divided into ancient, medieval and modern because we are not satisfied with the way James Mill divided Indian history. The British period is better referred to as colonial period rather than modern. What we learnt at last was when the subjugation of one country by another leads to political, economic, social and cultural changes, we refer to the process as colonization. So, student, our recapitulation is also completed here now. I have to share 2 worksheets with you. One is the fill in the blanks related with the chapter and the second one we have true and false. So, let us see if you can fill the gap. I will be reading out the sentences but will leave you with the answer. So, the first fill up is dash is certainly about changes that happened in the past. So just try to recall what you've learned today and try to fill them mentally. Second is, dash was the first Governor General of British India. The third blank to fill is, the dash are not important on their own, they become important because we focus on a particular set of events as important. Okay, now students, we have another worksheet, that is state whether true or false. So the first true and false we go with is, James Mill thought British should conquer all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people. Think whether this statement is correct or incorrect, true or false. Second is, James Mill divided Indian history into 3 periods: ancient, medieval and modern. Is it correct, student? Think. Okay, now third true and false is, to capture the characteristics of time, history is divided into different periods. Is it true or false? Now student, the fourth true and false is, many historians use the word colonial instead of modern period. So that's all for today. Hope you all had great learning. Thanks for listening to this session so patiently. Dear students, hope to see you soon for completing our chapter in the next session. Thank you.